Hello, I'm Eric Corman, Communications Director at League of Education Voters. Welcome to our free online webinar series, Lunchtime LEVinars. We started this series 5 years ago to share information and build knowledge on important and timely issues. Today's LEVinar is on incorporating student choice into dual credit and career technical education. During the 2019 legislative session, lawmakers made policy changes that create different pathways to meeting graduation requirements. But how do these new pathways connect students with success after high school? The Bellingham School District is an exemplar of how to do this right. Our speakers today are Tetrick, Director of Teaching and Learning for Career and Technical Education, and Steve Clarke, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. They will share how a 4x8 schedule supports student choice, culminating in their dual credit and career technical education programs, and answer your questions. The Bellingham School District's mission is to collectively commit that their students are cared for and respected, and that they will graduate from Bellingham schools prepared for success. All students will be exceptional in their own way, with strong character, a passion for learning, and ready for the widest range of educational and vocational options to support a variety and diversity of life choices. More info at bellinghamschools.org. A couple of housekeeping items before we begin. You'll notice a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. This is a space for you to submit questions to us. As always, feel free to send any feedback about the webinar quality to us on the chat function, which you'll also see at the bottom of your screen, or at info@educationvoters.org. Welcome, Jeff and Steve. Take it away.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. Appreciate the introduction and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us to go over what the Bellingham School District has done to incorporate student choice into dual credit and CTE through our 4x8 schedule. So as we get started, we're going to go over some of the required pieces of our district that really required some re-examining. We had a large laundry list of things that we had to address before we could roll out a schedule that would support kids' choice. Some of that being start and end times. We did some research, and a lot of the research points towards sleep studies and students being able to get more sleep, especially teenagers. So we had to tackle that as a district. We went to a common bell schedule, aligning all of our high schools to under one bell schedule. And in the past, we had different bell schedules at each school. So this was the first time in our district's history that we had to take on that challenge. Looking at RTI, response to intervention, ways that students can make up, get support during the school day for their coursework and be able to look at different ways to help them with their studies. We looked at a district-wide course catalog where we have one course catalog that shows all of our courses that we offer in the district, and this really helps to drive a student-driven schedule. And really to look at increasing focus on dual credit courses through CTE Dual Credit, college and high school, and AP. So the Bellingham Promise is our strategic plan that really ties in our vision and mission and core beliefs to what we have in terms of outcomes for our students and our graduates, and along with the key strategies that support these outcomes. And throughout this process, when we did this planning, we really looked at our task force to develop and create a schedule that will enhance the students' schedules and developing innovative high school programs, really to help kids establish a balance between requirements and passion area courses. So throughout this process, we had a list of criteria, but for the focus of this slide, I just wanted to highlight that a couple of the main key strategies for the outcomes for our students was the ability to pursue CTE pathways that in a 6-period day were really difficult for kids to fit into their schedule. You'll see through the slideshow, there's a lot of different highlights on how some students can't take classes that they'd want to take because they're so required. They're really strict on when they could take biology, when they could take, English, and what AP classes they couldn't access. So now we can offer a lot more robust schedule that allows students to take and access more of these programs. So a little bit about the process. This wasn't just something that we jumped into right away. There's a big financial impact. So for a district our size, we were looking at, we have about maybe a little over 3,500 high school students. So this just impacted our high school level, and that required about $2 million in additional funding to make sure that we had enough teaching staff teaching to support this move. And we took a year in planning, and Steve led up the planning task force. And so we had some different groups that were established with some key stakeholders in every building across our system, working on graduation requirements, how that was going to phase in, what credits, the course waiver work, if they were going to require waivers, looking at instructional implementations. A big piece of that was homework, because moving from 6 periods to 8 periods, you're adding 2 periods, you're adding that much more homework onto kids' plates. And then the MTSS, the multi-tiered systems of support work party, that really helped structure the supports for kids and our students. Anything to add on?
No, that's great.
Good. Okay. So some frustrations that we saw as we were developing this plan for a 4x8 schedule, we're moving to something that could really address the needs of our kids, seeking the 24 credit graduation requirement. We saw that there's no way to build in pathways for career and technical ed in 9th and 10th grade because of the restrictive schedule. It's very difficult for students to complete a sequence in a CTE pathway. In the past, we had a lot of exploratory intro CTE programs, but once we tried to push in more advanced level CTE classes that required some scaffolding, that could never get enough critical mass to have those classes run. And then we didn't have equitable solutions for kids that wanted to take advanced music, or if they wanted to take different classes, we had to offer it at 0 hour or 7th period, or have a night school or summer school. That was barriers for a lot of kids and a lot of students' families. And a real common quote that I've had, I taught for many years at Squalcombe High School, and I had a lot of kids say, hey, I wish I would have taken your class, or I wish I would have been able to access that dual credit class sooner. I just didn't have the room in my schedule.
One other, if I might just add, one other frustration that they didn't experience but would have experienced was obviously the state requiring 24 credits. When we were on a 6-period day, that's obvious. We were only going to get 24 credits over 4 years. And we knew that our kids, once they hit that, it might be a buzzsaw for kids that had failed a class or 2 or 3, that they would have no room to move if they had failed some courses. So we felt like we needed to create more space. By going to 32 credits, we created more space, not only to take electives and do the things Jeff just said, but also put some safeguards around our kids who had failed courses and give them room to be able to still graduate on time without such a tight schedule hemming them in.
And then for 2-year community college or technical college pathway students, we saw some frustrations and heard from some kids that they really had to decide to give up the idea of a 4-year college and university by the sophomore year. And they had to sub out their fine arts credits for pathway classes, or get their world language replaced with pathway classes. So those are some of the things that we heard from kids when we were in the 6-period day as complications and some frustrations that we heard. So now we don't have that anymore, because we moved to a 4x8, and now the kids are able to build in those pathways as well as world language. So it's a little bit better overall. So what we landed on, so on the left side of your screen, you'll see our high school graduation requirements and credits, and then the core 24 graduation requirements on the right side. So really what we did in our system is we added a credit of science and half credit of career and technical ed through a technical literacy graduation requirement that we built out for our 9th graders. But I circled down at the bottom that now our other courses are all electives, and that's 9.5 credits of electives. That really generates a nice balance for kids. So when they're looking at what their interests are in terms of career, they can focus on dual credit, they can focus on CTE, they can focus on a career cluster that they're aligned with, and really do some higher advancing into those pathway areas and take those higher end classes. And we're starting to see that now in our 3rd year into this system. So now we looked at this from freshman to senior year, that highlighted all the different elective classes that they could take. This is just one example of a student's high school and beyond or high school plan. You can see that you have the ability to really dive into a specific pathway and also have the ability to explore potential other electives that you may have interest in. So it's really a great balance of schedule in terms of requirements versus electives. So it really helps. And we'll see there's a video at the end that really shows some of the students' perspective on the new schedule and how it impacts their day. So throughout this process, we were really transparent and really clear with our plan, because as you saw, we're changing the bell schedule, changing the start time, one course catalog, a lot of big lifts in our district that happened all at once in 1 year. So we really were intentional on making sure that everybody knew the plan and were involved with the process and their input mattered. And so I'm just going to show you some of these slides that we gathered from student survey data. So this was, am I able to take the electives I want? Some strongly agreed, and we have about almost 2,000 of our students participated in the survey. So we had the majority of these students somewhat agree, or there's a big percentage somewhat disagreed or strongly disagreed. So we wanted to make sure that we can kind of tip the scales of that and provide a schedule and develop a schedule that gives kids the ability to really choose any elective that they want. Staff response on how they assigned homework. So a big thing on moving to an 8-period day is to look at the homework requirements and how we were going to address that and tackle that issue within the amount of homework the kids are doing outside of school. So these results kind of give us an idea on how much homework different teachers are giving their kids and what we needed to do in response to that as a district. So this is a sample of the student's voice on how often should we schedule time for supports. So how often should we have RTI time? It was very evident that through this survey result that the kids really wanted to have a built-in structure for the RTI support during the school day. The majority wanted it daily. So we'll show you on the next slide is one of our school's schedules. This is at Squalicum High School. So they use their advisory period is called Thor, tutoring, homework, or reading. And it's also Thor is the school mascot there, the storm. So you can see that there's 25 minutes built in every day for RTI for the students to get support in different classes. They have an ability to travel between they can go see their math class, they can go see their math teacher, their world language teacher, or they can stay within their Thor period with their homeroom teacher and get support from them as well. And also, this also highlights our start time and schedule. Notice that our start time's at 8:30 instead of 7:45 for high school. That gives our students a little bit more time to sleep in the morning. This also pushed our end time to 3:15 instead of 2:40. Was it 2:45?
2:15.
2:15. Yeah. So we actually increased the length of our day by an hour. So now they get out at 3:15 instead of 2:15. So
we added a few minutes actually to the instructional day for kids. So with our teacher contract, they agreed that we could add more time to the instructional day. Their day is still 7.5, but our students are now, instead of 6.5, I think they're 6 3/4.
We also looked at data from our departments. So this is a little snapshot of CTE Elective Interest. So as we're moving to a more robust schedule with more electives, we wanted to kind of get a sense of what students were interested in taking. So that kind of gave us a plan on curriculum impact and staffing impact. Because we're adding staffing, we had to figure out what staffing are we going to have to hire. So looking at this data really kind of helped us get an idea of what that was going to look like in the year to come. And in terms of CTE, we saw a very significant increase. This graph shows our timeline on CTE student FTE for enrollment. And you'll see that the circled 16-17 was prior to our 4x8 schedule rollout. Then 17-18 was when the data from our first year under the 4x8 schedule, and 180 FTE gain. So there was a lot more sections offered. A lot more students were able to access the career and technical programs that they're requesting. and we saw a real significant growth in our CTE enrollment. And then with that, we developed a lot more CTE dual credit opportunities with those career and technical classes. And you can see that in 17-18, when we did the 4x8 schedule, we had nearly 600 students earn dual credit through CTE. Now this doesn't even count the AP or the college and the high school kids. This is just an extract of the CTE dual credit. So you can see that there's a very significant increase in the students' ability to choose those classes, access those credits, and kind of get their vocational path underway. And also, these are all free credits through our local community and technical college as well. So at the end of this presentation, we're going to show a quick video that highlights the student response to the impact on this schedule change and how it improved or supported their learning. And at the end of this, we'll have time for any questions that you may have. So we'll get this video queued up here.
Welcome back to another What's Up Del. Today we're here with Dr. Baker to talk about the new schedule.
When and why did our high schools change to a new schedule?
All right. Well, thank you both for being here today. Our schedule changed this year, so we're 3-4 weeks into the new schedule. We spent the last couple of years talking about the schedule, and the main reasons that we changed it first was the state changed their graduation requirements and actually increased the number of classes students need to take to graduate in our state, which made it even tighter for students to be able to.
Your video just stopped, by the way.
Did you hear the,
Could you hear the sound?
Yep, we could hear the sound just fine.
Oh, well, there you go. Let's
just hit play again.
I think I was on.
Yep, and you'll need to start sharing again.
Where was that?
Also, we can hear you if you were to talk to each other. That your audio will come through on top of the audio from the film.
Okay, is it going still?
No, you'll need to restart your screen sharing.
Sorry. We do this all the time, can't you tell?
Classes, or they came in before school and did a 0-hour class as early as 6:30 in the morning. So with the medical research saying we needed to start later for adolescents, we combined those two things together, and this year for the first time we've started at 8:30, and we have what we call a 4x8 schedule with 4 classes one day and 4 the next. The other thing that it's allowed students to do, is take classes that you're excited about and interested in, and try something new. So both of you are in a leadership class, I believe. Yes. You're in marketing, art. You're taking a LINK class, which is a mentoring program for our freshmen. So the schedule opens up and allows students to have more choice, which has been a real benefit, I think, that we were hoping for and that we're now seeing.
Definitely. So what types of things are you hearing from students and parents about the new schedule?
So one is excitement, all the way from last spring when students got to register and they all of a sudden had the ability to sign up for more classes, or real excitement. I think parents see that excitement as well in their kids as they're taking classes that they wouldn't have been able to take. I think one of the things I'm hearing right now is around homework, and that's not a new thing with the schedule. Homework was a challenge before, but it certainly can create more complexities with 8 classes. So I think students are trying to figure out how to navigate that. One of the benefits that I often hear is you never get homework that's due the next day. You always have at least 2 days to do homework, which can be a benefit. But it can be a challenge that you may not see your teacher for a couple days in a row, or over the 3 or 4 days with a weekend. So that can be a challenge. The 85-minute block classes, for some students and some staff, they love it. It's a longer period of time. Some of our science teachers with labs, it's way better than a shorter class. And then for other students and staff, it can be feel long. And so I think people are, depending on the class, the teacher, the student, are trying to figure out that balance.
Definitely.
How have the teachers been prepared to handle teaching a longer period and only seeing one class every other day?
Yeah, good question. And in some districts, when they move to this new type of schedule with longer periods, it's a big change. But for us, all of our high schools, although they all had different schedules last year, they all had some variation where some days they had long periods, right? Some of you had maybe a 105-minute long class, and some days it was 55 minutes. So Our staff that have been in the district have already taught in longer periods of time, so they've gone through that transition that can be challenging if you've never taught in a block class before. So the fact that we've had longer periods, I think, helps us. But it is an adjustment in terms of the every other day. We have a lot of staff who have worked in other districts that have used this schedule, so they bring a lot of expertise to the table. And for some of it, it's like you got to do it for a year and figure out a new rhythm. And I think you probably have seen your teachers trying to figure out how to do it. What have you guys been hearing about the new schedule?
I've heard a lot of good things, especially with having more variety in like choices for classes. I've been able to kind of experience different types of like classes and like subjects that I wouldn't usually choose, but it helps me almost like find more of what I'm like interested in, and like I can invest more time into like choosing things I want to do like in my career path because I have more options. And also just the one kind of difficult thing is with sports after school, they tend to run later, so then I have to do homework a little bit later into night. But also on the flip side of that, we do get to sleep in a little bit more because we start later. So it's just a new balance that we have to get used to.
Yeah, well said. Okay. What about for you?
One thing I've noticed is that with languages.
Hey, we were going to stop the video for a little bit. Just we're aware of the time. The video is shared on our PowerPoint, so you can finish the video if you'd like, but we wanted to make sure we have room for questions. Eric, can you hear me okay?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I guess now if there's anybody with questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, okay, great. So if you do have a question for Jeff and Steve, type your question in the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. No question is too basic. And I do have actually several of them that are ready to go right now. I do have a question that says, how do you ensure that a 4x8 schedule stays on track? Because I heard in the video that it's 4 periods one day and 4 periods the next. Is that confusing for the students to know which sequence of classes happen on which day?
I don't think so. I mean, it's been, the block scheduling is obviously not new. I think block schedules have been around for a long time. So in terms of the question's always, is it going to be an alternating just A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, or do you have a set schedule where you switch it out? Every Monday is an A day, every Tuesday is a B day. We rotate it. We just keep it moving. And if we miss a day, we start it back up again. So we obviously make sure that first thing in the morning, kids know which schedule they're on. It's always on our website, what day we're on. So I don't think it's confusing for the kids.
Great, because I have a follow-up question that says, do Fridays alternate? Is that how you work Fridays?
Yeah, it depends on the week. So if you have one week that's A, B, A, B, A, the next week's going to be B, A, B, A, B. So for kids, it's nice because they only need to take a certain amount of books to school with them, or maybe they have a day where they don't have to bring any books and just a laptop. So I have a high school student this year, and she really enjoys the consistency of the schedule. In the past, we've had the same day on Monday and Friday for bookend schedules, and then blocks in between, which really get confusing for kids. And so I think that the simplicity of this schedule is really nice. It's a nice pace for kids.
Great. Well, I have another question, which is, how did you find the funding to support the 4x8 schedule? You obviously had to find an additional $2 million to hire additional staff. Was that difficult?
Well, we did that while the state was trying to figure out the McCleary deal and how they were going to address fully funding education. That was prime time for us to start thinking about what are the things we really want to be able to do in this district with additional funding coming. So obviously compensation was a big piece of that, but we knew we wanted to put it towards kids in the classroom. We still have work to do. We want to do a better middle school block schedule. So we've got still work to do, but we knew the high school was the one we wanted to crack, especially with the 24 credit requirement coming, and knowing that our kids just couldn't take the courses they really wanted to take or pursue a passion area, let alone two or three, which they can do now, unless we did something with the schedule. So it was expensive, but it was the right thing to do.
Great, thank you. I have another question, which is, what kinds of pushback have you received after switching to a 4x8 schedule?
We received a little bit of concern with some of our AP teachers because it does reduce the instructional minutes if you're looking at a full year, because they're not changing when that test date is, because that test date is set in stone. So we did have a reduction in minutes for the advanced placement classes. Other pushback I could think of, some teachers thought that the periods are a little bit too long. They're at 85 minutes or 80 minutes in terms of, as compared to a 6-period day. If you're doing straight 6, it's about a 55-minute period. But we had a lot of work around instructional coaching and different ways to organize lesson planning to help move us into a more comfortable, instructional pattern where we could start doing an 80-minute lesson. So I think that was kind of the struggle a little bit at the beginning.
And I think that's a mix too, because we had some staff that were on that straight 6-period day. Again, our schools were all on different schedules, 6-period structure, but different schedules. One of our schools was fully blocked pretty much. So they were used to actually 100-minute periods. So 80 to 85 felt pretty fast for some of those teachers. So we kind of hit, I think, a good balance with 80 to 85. The other thing is we wanted to make sure, when you have an alternating block on a 6-period, you get one planning period, and usually that's an extended planning over 2 days. You have one every other day, where with this schedule they have an 80-minute planning period every day, which I think helps offset some of the concerns that they had with that.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Have time for about 2 more questions. And again, you can use the chat box in the lower part of your screen to submit a question. The next question I have is, how do you communicate the pathway options with students so that they know what is available to them?
Well, that's a great question. A lot of those pathway questions are yet to be answered by the State Board of Ed, but we're waiting eagerly to have that answer in early November. But right now we have pathways with every career cluster. So what we do is we align our elective courses up into the career cluster areas for CTE, and then that shows the sequence in every area. So what we do is we show kids in 9th grade and also in 8th grade, when they're building their high school and beyond plan, when they're doing their interest inventory assessments, they're identifying, they may say, hey, I'm really interested in manufacturing, STEM, and transportation. Out of those 3 clusters, then we can look at what elective classes are aligned with those career areas. And so in terms of program and sequencing and pathways, we kind of narrow the focus down a little bit. And then once they get into those intro classes in high school, then their instructors really take over and say, okay, after this, then you can do this. After that, then comes this. And after high school, then you can do this. So we're working on developing and tightening up those pathways right now and making sure that all of our pathways have dual credit. All of them have industry recognized credentials. And that's our hope. And that's the goal that I think the state is pushing out as well with new graduation requirements in terms of CTE courses.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, last question I have for you is, how can other districts have the kinds of programming and successes that you're having in Bellingham? Is there something that we should be asking our districts for in order to get what Bellingham is doing?
Well, I think that we saw the biggest change when we opened our schedule to allow more kids to choose passionary subjects. When kids are able to select more electives in their schedule, I think that's where we saw the biggest change in our system, is that now we can offer more advanced classes. Now we can have pathway opportunities for kids. Now we can have dual credit classes run when before we get 6 or 7 kids signed up. Now we've got 24, 25 kids signed up so we can run those classes.
And I think one of the compelling things, we have a strong access and equity priority and agenda. And we've been hamstrung for a long time by the schedule, just not being able to do right for our kids because we're restricted by the schedule. This was an opportunity to take the lid off of that, open it up, and really offer the courses that our kids should have access to, now have access to, and are able to go on and do things that they didn't think they could do before because they have the skills, they have the skills behind them now to be able to be successful. And It's been able to allow us to offer music courses that our kids who lived in some of our higher poverty areas couldn't get to those classes first thing in the morning. Now it's part of our regular school day. We offer traffic safety as a class we offer during the school day now. Every other community, it costs their kids $450. We put it during the school day. We teach it during the school day so every kid can take it. Every kid can drive after school with our teachers. If we're compelled by giving access to every kid, we have to look at school differently. And that starts with, I hate to say it at the high school, it starts with the schedule.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So does that mean that any district in Washington State can do what you're doing with the tools that they have?
I think so. We hit it right. I got to say, Eric, we hit it right with timing on the McCleary case. Like, to be honest, with budgets getting tighter now and districts asking us how could we do it, I'm not saying you couldn't do it, but it would have been hard. It was easier for us to put this in place 2 to 3 years ago than maybe it would be now. But it's not impossible. It's just a little more challenging, I think, with the financial conditions we're in from the state.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that the schedule and the opportunity and the availability has to come for the kids to enter those programs. You can't build the programs if the kids can't take them.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing now, is that the kids can take the programs, and now we're building more. So the schedule is the one that is really driving it.
Got it. So that means that if I'm a parent and I'm watching this and I'm thinking, hey, wait a minute, what they're doing is great, I should go to my school board members and say, hey, we need to adopt a new schedule. Would that be the place to start?
I would agree, and I think that we're seeing that across the state now. Many districts are going from a 6-period day to a 7 or 8-period day. Different modifications, obviously, from district to district, but I think the intent is the same with every district, is to open more opportunities and programs for kids.
And we'd be glad to help any district. There are plenty of districts that helped us. We'd be happy to help anybody on that road.
That is fantastic. Great. Well, Jeff and Steve, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your presentation. We will be posting this on our website, educationvoters.org. And our next webinar is about universal design for learning and will take place Monday, November 18th at 12:15 p.m. We will soon post the registration information on our website and share it on our Facebook page and our Twitter feed. Thanks again for each of you who joined us today. If you have any additional questions or comments, please send them to info@educationvoters.org. As I said, a recording of today's presentation will be available on our website along with the presentation slides. Feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues. If you would like to learn more about League of Education Voters or support our work, please visit our website, educationvoters.org. Thank you again for listening. Thank you again for attending. Jeff, Steve, thank you so much for your presentation. That was very helpful. And I encourage you to join us in future webinars.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.